Chapter 18, Freedom from Bad Relationships. We've seen that it's foolish to waste time trying to deal with incompatible people. There are plenty of people around who would want you to be as you are. That doesn't mean, however, that you're likely to find individuals with whom you'll be 100% compatible, with the exact same tastes, values, attitudes, and ideas that you have. You're more likely to find individuals with whom you'll have one or more important things in common. In the areas that you have in common, you'll please the other person most by doing what you want to do. That's the way it should be. No sacrifices are required by either person. Such relationships can make your life far more exciting. They provide something to look forward to, something to enjoy, and the wonderful glow that comes from knowing that someone else is seeing and enjoying things in much the same way you do. Unfortunately, such good relationships often deteriorate into bad ones. What was once a good friendship can deteriorate into a relationship of obligations, conflicts, and distrust. A love affair that started with an ecstatic glow can degenerate into a forum for arguments. A business relationship that began as a source of opportunity can decay into a bitter conflict of interest. Why do such things happen? Is it because no relationship can be expected to last? Is it just impossible for people to get along indefinitely? I don't think so. I think the problem has to do with the way relationships are handled. Once again, too many assumptions are taken for granted, and they create problems because the assumptions aren't realistic. Labels again. The biggest problem probably stems from the ease with which you can label a relationship and then, in effect, treat the individual as if he were the label. One is called a friend, or partner, or lover, or wife, and the labels imply subtle expectations concerning the role the person is expected to play in your life. For example, a friend is someone who will lend you money when you're in trouble. A wife is someone who will cook, clean house, make love when you want to, and center her life around your family. But what the label requires may not be in the self-interest of the person involved, so conflicts can result. Loyalty is demanded, and the relationship becomes a source of aggravation for everyone concerned. Suppose you meet someone, become friends with him, enjoy his company for several weeks, and then are confronted with a request to take care of his Great Dane while he's on vacation. That's the beginning of a new relationship. What had previously been completely beneficial to you now becomes a source of obligations and conflicts of interest. You'll never be able to relax completely and enjoy that person again. If your wife makes friends with a neighbor and then expects the two families to take their vacations together, you may wind up taking your vacation in the group trap. The individuality of all the other members of the family will be eroded by the attempt to enlarge upon a simple, enjoyable relationship between two women. If you expect your secretary to wait on you hand and foot, do your Christmas shopping for you, and lie to your wife when you're out of the office, you're probably asking for more than she bargained for, and you may lose what you had hired, a good secretary. Relationships can be fruitful only when they're in the self-interest of each person. Unfortunately, the normal labels and assumptions go far beyond that, and so problems develop. In this chapter, we'll explore the general principles that can keep good relationships from falling apart. And in the next 4 chapters, we'll apply those principles to love affairs, family situations, and businesses. Principles. There are 3 principles that I find helpful to remember. 1. Don't think in terms of groups. As we saw in the group trap chapter, groups don't think, act, or have motivations. Only individuals do. It's misleading to think of a group as being of one mind and purpose. Each individual is different from every other individual. 2. Limit the relationship to what you have in common. Don't expect more from the relationship than that what is in the self-interest of each person involved. When you extend the relationship beyond the areas of mutual self-interest, someone will have to sacrifice. 3. Don't attempt to perpetuate a relationship by contract. Change is inevitable. Alternatives, knowledge, and desires change. Any relationship should last as long as it's beneficial to each party. If an individual is required to continue in a relationship past the time it's beneficial to him, he loses. and it won't be possible for him to satisfy the needs of anyone else in the relationship if he's acting out of duty and not enthusiasm. Don't make the relationship an end in itself that must be perpetuated at all costs. That will lead to demands for sacrifices in the name of making our marriage work, keeping our friendship, or making the business succeed. Relationships are only means to the ends desired by each of the people involved. When the ends are no longer served, the relationship should end. In commercial situations, contracts are sometimes required. This is usually because the supplier doesn't want to make a given investment unless he's assured of an appropriate return on his investment. This can be handled, however, by including in the contract a provision for early termination, accompanied by a cash payoff that provides the appropriate profit for the investment made. The three principles are saying, in effect, don't make an institution of a relationship. Don't add inappropriate activities to it. Don't try to fit it within a traditional context. Don't add duties and obligations to it that are irrelevant to the desires of the people involved. Let the relationship evolve as it will, as mutual self-interest leads it. Beer bus. Let's apply these principles to an example. Suppose three men with the unimaginative names of A, B, and C find that they have something in common. They discover that they all like to drink beer, and they enjoy one another's company and conversation when they drink. Suppose they find that they greatly enjoy getting together on Saturday nights to drink beer. All well and good. Our first principle suggests that they are still individuals, not a group. Neither of them should allow his self-interest to be submerged into an artificial entity known as the group. For relationships with one another are a small part of their lives. Each of them has many, many interests and concerns apart from beer and conversation about the football scores. And since each of them is a different person, their relationships with one another will be different. A and B will probably have some things in common that B and C don't have. To think of the group as a single entity might prevent A and B from taking advantage of the common interests that concern only them. They might both enjoy bowling, for example, if they feel they can bowl together, only if it's agreeable to C who prefers golf. They'll lose an opportunity to add to their enjoyment. There are actually three separate relationships, A and B, B and C, and A and C. The second principle suggests that the relationship be limited to only what the participants have in common. To enlarge the relationships beyond the small areas in common is to open the door to many conflicts of interest. For example, if A expects B and C to help him paint his garage, what's a friend for? It will probably be a loss to all three. For one thing, B and C may be lousy garage painters, might lose by not paying the necessary price to have done it right. And for B and C, the relationship is no longer just good beer and good conversation. Now it includes duties and obligations. No one will be able to relax completely any longer, for he'll never know when he'll be called upon to set aside his own self-interest. Even if he refuses such requests, it will be a strain on the relationship. The third principle says that you shouldn't try to perpetuate a relationship by contract. In a burst of exuberance and good fellowship, the three buddies might agree to meet together every Saturday night for the next 10 years, but that would probably be a big mistake, for all three of them are changing constantly. Each of them is discovering new alternatives, new motivations, and new interests. One of them may decide that he prefers wine. Another might even meet a girl someday and decide that she offers him more than his Saturday night buddies. To attempt to preserve the relationship by contract is only going to bend each of them out of shape. In fact, other common interests might be suppressed by the fixed structure of the relationship as long as they're committed to one routine. They might ignore other things they could do together that would be more enjoyable. Each relationship should be taken on its own merits. The relationship should evolve as it will, with no preconceived goals, structure, expectations, or rules. Our friends A, B, and C don't have to share uncommon interests. They can limit their relationships to the enjoyment of the things they do have in common, including their dumb names. The beer bust example is rather obvious. So much the better that it is. For these same principles can be subverted subtly, and easily in more complicated relationships. And when they're subverted, problems develop. And what was once a source of pleasure and opportunity can turn into a loss of freedom. Take things as they are. You're bound to be disappointed when you apply labels to people and relationships and then expect them to live up to the labels. Your definition of a friend may be considerably different from the one your friend has. What you expect from him may be far more than he's willing to give, regardless of what you may feel you've done for him. Relationships don't have to be structured, perpetuated, tied down. They'll work out best if you let them evolve as they will, limiting your expectations to what is and continues to be mutually beneficial. When you find a friend who's intellectually stimulating, enjoy him for the excellent discussions you can have, but don't expect him to help arrange your furniture or lend you money. Those things are separate parts of your life, not a part of his. If you need money and can't borrow it at a bank or finance company, don't jeopardize good friendships by appealing for money on the basis of loyalty. Offer terms that would make it worth more to a friend to lend the money than to use it himself. Make sure the terms are such that he'd be eager to be involved in the deal, even if his friends weren't to be the borrower. If that isn't possible, go without the money. It can't be as important as a good friendship. If you keep the three principles in mind, you can let each relationship grow naturally. You'll probably avoid most of the conflicts, arguments, and burdens that most people take for granted in their important relationships. The other person will be a positive benefit to your life. If the relationship grows and seems to be broadening, approach each new area of mutual interest on its own merits. Don't lump activities together simply because you like someone. You'll continue to like him more if there are no dealings between you that aren't entered for their specific value to each of you. If you find a friend that's closer to you than anyone you've known, don't get carried away and try to impose your separate, different tastes upon him. If you fall in love, don't expect that every interest, every decision, and every value will be exactly the same between you. If you can accept the differences that exist between you and those you care for, you can make the most of what you have together. If you try to overcome the differences, you'll only make it harder to enjoy the things you do have together. Granting freedom. Recognize each person you associate with for what he is, what specifically he has to offer you, and what he might value in you. Don't confuse the issue by bringing up external matters that can only reduce the value of the relationship. Relationships shouldn't be sources of restrictions, and they won't be if you take them as they are. Perhaps the three principles can be summed up as one important principle: let others be free. Don't try to tie them down with obligations, loyalties, duties, commitments, or appeals to sympathy. Make it your policy that you don't expect anyone to do that isn't what is in his self-interest. Don't try to restrict your lover's activities. Don't try to make your spouse give up his interest for you. Don't give your friends reason to feel that you expect anything from them but what is in their self-interest to give. If you let others be free, you'll be a rare person, and a valuable one. You'll be in demand because you won't create the conflicts and arguments that so many people have had from others. Your freedom is just important, of course. You have to learn to say no in a way that doesn't create strain and conflict. When you learn that, others will usually respect your individuality. Your freedom and the freedom of those you deal with are equally important to you. If people come to you because they freely want to, you'll receive more genuine love, friendship, understanding, and appreciation than you could possibly get by asking for it or demanding it.